Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Sometimes you just sit there at 3 in the morning scrolling through your phone and your brain just lands on a couple that you didn't know you needed in your life. And once it lands, it doesn't leave. It just sits there, it stews, and you start thinking more and more about this specific pairing and start wondering and start going on like, wait a minute, why has nobody done this? Why is this not a thing? Why haven't they made a crossover comic? Because these two would be perfect for each other. And that right there is exactly why my mind has kind of gotten into the mind of Peter Parker and Kara Zor-El, Spider-Man and Supergirl. And the more that I sit with this idea, the more that I genuinely believe that these two would make the best couple in comics. Like, hands down, not even close. So, I know, before anybody types anything in the comments, yeah, these are two completely different companies. Yeah, I know this would only ever happen in a crossover. And if we're being fair, there is a crossover event that's been going on for a while. So it could have happened and it might not happen at any time soon, but it could potentially happen. And obviously, yes, this is a hypothetical. We have, Jimmy Olsen, MJ, they are fairly similar in terms of characters. And this is a what if, but hear me out. The more you think about the way that these two could actually work, the more it starts to feel like this hypothetical could be more of an opportunity that DC and Marvel are leaving on the table. So if you haven't already, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, and shout out to my members, and let's get into this video. So let's start off with the foundation. The thing that makes any couple actually work in fiction is they get each other, like on a fundamental, soul deep level. And Peter Parker and Kara Zor-El will get each other in a way that almost no other characters in their respective universes do. Both of them are carrying on this enormous weight that nobody else really understands. Obviously, we know Peter has the weight of being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, of feeling every bad thing that happens in his city is somehow his own fault, and trying to balance that regular life with the power of his responsibility that he has to deal with. And then Kara is carrying the weight of being the last survivor of an entire planet that she actually remembers. She didn't leave Krypton like a baby like Clark did. She remembers it. She watched it die. And that's a shared weight. That's something that creates a shared sense of caring about something that people around you cannot fully understand, that they would both be able to understand within each other. That is the foundation of any good relationship, because they would be able to not actually have to explain it to each other. They would just know. Peter would just look at Kara and automatically recognize that look, that quiet exhaustion behind that smile. And Kara would look at Peter and immediately see somebody who has been trying to just do the right thing in a world that doesn't always reward it. And she would get that too. And from that point on, you'd be able to start seeing something real form instantaneously. From that, you'd have a connection that just doesn't have to be built. It is there instantaneously. And I'm going to be honest, their dynamic would be insane too. She would lift him up and he would be able to ground her. And I know I usually use that kind of phrasing, but this one actually works a little better, because here's really where it gets good. The dynamic between these two, as I already said, would be perfect. And I mean genuinely perfect. Peter Parker, especially comics Peter Parker, is a guy who can spiral. He can get into his own head. He will basically let the weight of everything just drag him down to the point that it is a pit of self-doubt and self-loathing. And you know that woe is me energy that we have Peter Parker almost always feeling at any given point in time, and that Tom Holland's Peter Parker is probably going to be feeling in the new movie that's going to be coming out just in the next month or so. So we know that's just who Peter Parker is sometimes. And right for and the right partner for Peter is somebody who can pull him out of that without judgment. Somebody who can just be like, hey, you're good, you're doing great, and you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Most of Peter Parker's love interests usually get me annoyed in that specific sense, because MJ, for the most part, usually is a fairly good love interest, but we have problems with her depending on the variation of her. Gwen Stacy, obviously, we know what happened there. Felicia, we know kind of the problems there, but Kara could actually be somebody that I really see a good connection growing with. And I've already made a video on talking about why I think they would be a perfect couple, but I really just wanted to double back and really get into it again, because Kara is exactly that for Peter. Kara would be that incredible warmth, that incredible optimism. Even after everything that she's been through, she's somebody that can still light up the room. She's still somebody that chooses to be hopeful, even when every reason in her world tells her she really shouldn't be. And that energy, that light, would be the exact thing that Peter needs in his life. She would be able to lift him up. She would be able to remind him what he does and why he does it. And she would be the partner that really makes him better. And then on the flip side, Peter would be able to ground her, because Kara, for all the hope and warmth that she has this thing that can sometimes feel like she's disconnected from the world that she's trying to protect. She's an alien on a planet that she didn't grow up on. She sometimes struggles feeling like she belongs. And Peter, who is so deeply rooted into his community, so deeply human and so deeply connected to his neighborhood and his people, would be the perfect person to remind her where she belongs and that kind of place that she needs to feel like home. That is the world that he could be able to show her. That would be the way that he could be able to ground her in the same way that she would be lifting him up. And that mutual exchange and the way that they could be able to work together for the betterment of each other would be a give and take that really works perfectly for them. And let's not even get started on the humor, because the banter would be absolutely insane between these two. Because the way that we know who Peter Parker is when he's at his best, when he's in his suit, when he's springing through Manhattan, is one of the funniest characters in all of comics. The quips, the banter, the running commentary in the middle of a fight. That is Peter Parker at his best. And Kara, especially modern Kara, has shown over and over that she has that same potential to have that energy. We saw the Supergirl TV show. She can be funny, she can be playful, she doesn't always have to take herself seriously as some of the other Kryptonians, and she can have that just joy about her. Imagine these two on a team up. Imagine them just swaying through, flying around the city together, absolutely roasting each other. Just Peter making jokes about how it must be nice to basically fly instead of having to web around the entire city. Kara just coming back with, "I'm sorry, did the cardio get to you?" Like that energy, that back and forth, that would be something in the most kind of fun dialogue that I could possibly see them having. And obviously, that's just on the quick end, so they would definitely be having better convos. And on top of that and everything else, the humor would just be what really gets them through the hard stuff. Because these two are very much characters that basically have to light everything else up while they're feeling at their entire lowest, unless we have him in his Venom suit, which then that doesn't count. Because when you have a partner who can make you laugh in the middle of your worst day of your life, that's when you know you have something real, firstly. And that's when they can basically work together to make sure that neither one of them are already in the lowest extents of what they need to be at, instead of being where they could potentially be. They would just be able to brighten each other's day with the laughter that they could be showing each other. Now, don't get me wrong, there is something that I think a lot of people are going to probably push back on, but I think that power dynamic that they're going to have between Peter and Kara actually would probably work fairly well. Yes, Kara is significantly more powerful than Peter. She's more borderline god tier than anything else, and Peter is, by technicality, a street level hero. We don't really know if we can consider Spider-Man a street level hero on any specific standpoint, just on his strength alone. But on paper, there's a huge gap. But the thing about that gap is it doesn't really matter in the relationship, because it actually creates space for something more interesting in the dynamics. Because Peter is not threatened by powerful women. Peter has never been on that kind of wavelength. He's just always been around incredibly powerful people in his career. He's dated and basically pursued incredibly accomplished, capable women that have their own things sorted and everything basically figured out on their own end. He doesn't need to be the strongest in the room. He doesn't need to be the most rich. He doesn't need to be the most powerful. That's not in his ego. And Kara, on the other hand, she's somebody who occasionally struggled with people being intimidated by that power, people being just threatened by the fact that she could quite literally crush you and making everybody else feel like they're fragile. She feels fragile or everything else because no one really can come over to her and, most guys around are going to be a lot scared to talk to somebody that can just bench press you without ever lifting a sweat. So Peter would be able to treat her with the kind of love and respect as a person, just a person. He would joke with her. He would push back on her. He would be able to call her out when she's being ridiculous. And after a lifetime of people fearing her or worshiping her, having somebody that just sees her as Kara would be everything. It would be exactly what she needs. And don't get me wrong, she does have friends. She does have people that fully feel like that about her. But somebody that just comes off the get go without any other motives or intentions is something that is extremely rare to see. That's why Peter Parker is such a special person. But we can't stay on the happy note the entire time. We also have to talk about the loss because they both know what it means. Because that heavy part of their entire history, that heavy part of their past, is going to be something that bonds them quite easily. Peter has lost so many things, whether you're talking about comics versions of Peter or even the MCU version of Peter. He has lost basically everything in either one, whether it's having to give away his own kid and his own wife just to make sure that the world gets back to a peaceful ending or whatever. Peter Parker can never be happy. The universe doesn't ever allow that. And Kara has the most trauma that anybody could basically ever have just from watching her entire planet die and being the last person to actually remember it on the good side. Yes, we have people like Zod, but there's a difference from being trapped in the Phantom Zone and watching the planet die yourself while you're on a ship flying away. So these two are people that have been basically through the ringer. They have lost on so high of a level that they would be able to build a connection that people could never fully understand. They would be able to talk about that without really having to explain it to each other. And they would just be able to sit with each other in those quiet moments where the grief comes back out of nowhere. And for anybody with PTSD, for anybody with actual extreme trauma that has haunted them for a long period of time, and this is speaking from experience, that grief will come around and it might not have any triggers and might not have any specific meanings and whatever. It might just come around, and having somebody that you can be right there with that understands to a specific level on the kind of grief that you're hitting is gonna be an extremely good thing that will only put you closer to that person no matter what. So them being able to be there for each other would just be able to strengthen their relationship in general. Now, obviously, I can't talk about this being the best ship in comics without actively speaking on why it beats existing ships in their own kind of pairings. Because obviously, I know what somebody's going to say. Well, there's Mary Jane Watson, there's Gwen, there's Felicia. And honestly, as I said, I love MJ for the most part. And I love Peter and MJ as a couple, but they really hardly ever work on full time and for the long run. We all know the Paul situation. And whether you like Paul or hate Paul, it doesn't really matter. We know how that situation kind of goes. And the thing is, they are iconic. But the reality of Peter in modern comics is MJ's relationship is always kept in that weird limbo state in that last 20 years that we've had. They can never be happy, and these two can never truly move forward. So MJ as the end game for Peter is just something that's never going to really be on the table the way that it used to be. And Kara on the DC side has had a hard time finding a partner that really clicks for her. Like, she is one of the most underutilized characters in the romantic storytelling aspect in DC. She's had a few partners here or there, and nothing really that's ever truly stuck, and nothing that's ever gone on to feel like a complete relationship that defines her. So when you have two characters whose lives are kind of holding a pattern of their same respective universes and holding this weird pattern, throwing them at each other in a cross universe crossover would be the cleanest and most exciting way to give them both a relationship that feels alive and actually feels like it's worth and giving a future in a way that we're never going to really see these characters have in their own kind of stories. So, yeah, that's my take. Spider-Man and Supergirl would be the best couple in comics. The shared weight, the dynamic, the humor, the power balance, the shared experience of loss, the way that the worlds just kind of line up with each other and be able to lift each other down and basically keep themselves at like a very good standpoint, all that adds up into a relationship that if it ever happened would just be perfect. And I'm not going to say that it has to be permanent and has to be like end game kind of thing, because I'm not going to say they have to get married and go off into the sunset. But I feel like even in one crossover, one limited series exploring what these two would be like together would be one of the best comics that either company has ever put out. And I'm very confident in this idea. So I'm willing to die on this hill. Now, with that said, I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Do you agree? Do you have other pairings that think would work better? Or do you think that Marvel and DC's romantic crossovers are just not in the cards for me? Like, not in the cards for me. So throw that down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys think in your heads and everything else like that. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed and show some show some love to this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and all that good stuff. Shout out to members, as I already said but earlier. If you guys want to join up and get access to exclusive perks, go check the description below. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video, YouTube believes that you'll enjoy this one up top. And check it out. Peace.